The North London derby is here. We are literally hours away now from Arsenal going into what I would describe as arguably the most terrifying situation you could find yourself in as a Gunners fan. I'm going to be joined by a guest in just a second to go through it all, but let's crack on with the show. Hello and welcome to the Gooner Talk, back again with you guys for another show. I'm joined by a very brave man coming onto an Arsenal channel. Joe Aldridge, how you doing, mate? Are you well?
Yeah, I'm very good, thanks. How are you?
Yes, good, thank you. Very good. Do you want to just introduce yourself to the listeners, tell people what you do, how we know each other as well, probably a good way to do it.
Yeah, we've worked together in the past, haven't we? I'm a producer at Talksport, so we've done a bit of work together in the past, and I'm a Spurs fan. So, we've had a little bit of banter, haven't we, in the past, kind of you being a
Yeah.
Gooner, me being a Spurs fan, and I've got you on various shows in the past to talk about Arsenal, and also I know your connections with European football, and you're very knowledgeable on your Spanish football as well. So, yeah, all from there.
Yeah, and obviously we were on with Hugh Wizzy, obviously listeners I know very well, and yeah, it was enjoyable while it was going on. But I thought who better to get on to talk about Arsenal Spurs than yourself. We do these shows. People who watch the show now know that we look through the lineups, but before we go into that, I just want to kind of get from your side of things, from a Spurs fan looking at us right now. Be nice. But I mean, what is it kind of you? How do you view Arsenal right now? Because we're in very much a transition situation still. We've got a new manager in Arteta who's been here just over nearly a year now. And obviously things aren't going particularly well. And then you look on your side, still relatively new manager in Mourinho, who's started his first full season at the club as well. How do you kind of, I suppose, juxtapose the two teams in comparison to each other?
I suppose it's been a little bit of opposites, isn't it? In terms of Mourinho had a bit of a slow start to his tenure at Spurs, and Arteta got off to a flying start. And it seems to a little bit of roles reversed at the moment in terms of Arteta seems to be the man who's getting a bit of stick and under pressure, whereas Mourinho is now kind of being looked at as a man revived. And obviously Spurs sitting at the top of the table is getting a lot of praise. I think it's going to be an interesting one. I always feel going into a North London derby when Spurs are favourites, there's a little bit of don't know. I'm not as comfortable. I think I prefer it when we go in as the underdog, really. So because I think on paper everyone expects Spurs to win. I don't think I'd be. Would I be wrong saying that?
I don't think you would. I think that I mean, Arsenal are not going into this anywhere close to being favourites. That's for sure. I think that Spurs are going into this game very much top of the league, looking to easily secure Champions League football and maybe even push ahead for a title, which sounds completely alien and strange and painful to say. But and Arsenal are very much just trying to get their season back on track. I mean, if you win this game, you go 11 points clear of us. But alternatively, if Arsenal somehow miraculously come out of a win from this game, it suddenly shortens to 5 points, which is a lot smaller than 11. So it's a weird dynamic to be looking into this game. I suppose the best way to kind of do it is if we look at the lineups we've both chosen, then we can break into some questions about the players specifically. So I should be able to see on your screen now the team that you've gone for. It's There are a few players that have enjoyed a bit of a renaissance under Mourinho, and Dombele is the one that I pick out clearly. He was someone that I remember writing a piece for 101 about him saying that he would never play for Mourinho again a few months back, and now he's enjoying what is very much a turnaround under the Portuguese coach.
Yeah, he's been absolutely superb this season. I think Spurs fans always could see technically how good he was, on the ball. He doesn't give it away, and he reminds, I think, people well, he reminds me of Moussa Dembele in terms of the way he
Mm.
just keeps the ball. He seems to be able to get out of situations where he's got multiple players around him. He just swats people off basically, and moves them out the way, and always is looking for that forward pass, splits defences. I think his fitness and adjusting to the pace of the English game was probably the question mark last year. But he's worked a lot with Mourinho over kind of the lockdown period and the pre-season as it was coming into this year, and he's become an integral part. I think for me, he's behind Harry Kane and Hugo Lloris. He's probably the next name that's straight on the team sheet at the moment, because
More
he
than
just
Son.
makes things happen. Yeah, listen, I think you look at the attacking options that we have, and Son, Kane, Bale, Lucas, Bergwijn. You've got so many options, and of course, Son and Kane, I think, are always going to be, two of the three, if they're fit, that will play. But I just think, going back to Ndombele, I just think he's such a wonderful player, and he's he's made things happen for Spurs this year, and he's in that team if he's fit. The problem is with Ndombele is he can't seem to play more than an hour. So we have to change things up. I'm not sure what his stats are this season, but I don't think he's completed many 90 minutes. So that's the one obviously concern. But he's certainly the player that can make things happen.
I mean, the biggest thing I noticed when you sent me your lineup was the front three being including Bale. Tell me if I'm wrong. I feel that Mourinho might choose Bale because of obviously his link to the club and in the way in which he could perform in the derby specifically, and this being a player that understands this game very well from like a personal level. But I was still surprised to see you pick him. Do you want to just explain why he's in?
I just think that he obviously is kind of got more and more game time now. Listen, with Bale, we always know, and everyone's been talking about it, when he's fit and he's match fit, he will be the preferred player alongside Kane and Son in that front three. And it's just been a matter of getting him to that level where he is, because he hasn't played football in so long. It's a matter of getting him to that level when he's ready to play. And I think he's had the minutes now. He's obviously been playing in the Europa League. He's been making the odd Premier League appearance, and I also think you need to look at the other players that have played in that right forward role. When Bale hasn't been there, Bergwijn and Lucas. Bergwijn wasn't particularly impressive, I didn't think, against Chelsea, especially in the second half. And I just think it's a good game to throw Bale into, and he's obviously got a good record against Arsenal when playing for Spurs in the past in terms of scoring goals. So I don't know. I just wouldn't be surprised to see Bale thrown in there. I think if there was a game to do it, it's going to happen at some stage where you're going to have this front three start up front. I don't think it's happened yet in the Premier League this season, so it's going to happen at some stage. And this would be the perfect game to do it, I think, in my mind.
Kane's kind of operated as a kind of a false nine. It's like kind of what Francesco Totti did for quite a while at Roma in a way, dropping into that kind of number 10 position, and then both Son and Bergwijn and Lucas or Bale, whoever's playing, moving into a more advanced role so that Kane could feed them. And it's weird because, and I'm very much a person who is an Arsenal fan. You get passionate about being an Arsenal fan. You don't want to be seen to be being praising, I suppose, of you guys quite often. But I also think it's important not to be fickle and still turn around as a kind of professional in the sport and say that it's worked putting it in this way. And Kane looks good in this position, and specifically has been a good player at Spurs for a very long time in a striking role. So I'm very surprised to have seen him moved tactically into this new role, but it's suited him down to the ground, hasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, you only have to look at his goal and assist record, and it hasn't really changed. It's if anything, the season has got better. I mean, he's playing in that deeper role, but people forget his distribution is on another level. His range of passing and the way he can pick players out. He played a similar role for England in the 2018 World Cup, where he tended to drop a little bit deeper, and Sterling would make the runs in behind. And Kane can pick the passes out, and it's worked a treat with Son at times this season. Obviously, the record that they've got together of assists and goals of those two related to each other. I just think it's a natural way his career is going. He's not particularly quick, Harry Kane. It's probably the weakest, element of his game. But his hold-up play is superb. It's strong. It's got distribution, and the other thing is it allows him to arrive late into the box, and his finishing within the area is phenomenal.
If before we go on to the Arsenal lineup, the last thing I wanted to say about Kane and Lloris, I suppose, is the mind games that Mourinho is always famous for. You put in a text to me saying that you weren't sure if Lloris was going to start. Kane was also labelled as a doubt in the week. Mourinho basically said that he's got a chance to be fit for the weekend, but he's left it very, very much open to interpretation. Are you still fully expecting both of them to start the game, and this is kind of just a little bit of a tactic from him?
I definitely expect Kane. I'd be stunned if Kane didn't play. It was a strange one in the week because there was no kind of. Normally, you hear a rumor that he hasn't trained or it hasn't happened, and it just come out of nowhere really, and there was no reason as to why. So I expect Kane to play. Mourinho has indicated, hasn't he, pretty much that he's going to play. So I'd be stunned if he didn't. With Lloris, I'm not as confident, and that does worry me. I think Joe Hart hasn't played a Premier League game in 2 years. He didn't look, great on Thursday. Listen, I think he's been a great addition to the squad because he's someone that can really motivate the team and is a good person to have in the dressing room. But he's been brought in, let's face it, to be that and not to be on the pitch. But he's worked his way to become second choice in the time he's been at the club, pushing Gazaniga to third choice. And I suppose he's there to stand in. And I suppose we're in a period where we don't know, players are becoming unavailable for reasons other than injuries because of the COVID situation. And we don't quite know what's going on. It's kept, very under wraps, rightly so for privacy reasons. So you never know what the situation is with players, basically. And I don't want to speculate on what the issue is with Hugo Lloris, but he wasn't involved in the squad on Thursday. Normally he would at least travel for the Europa League games, even though he wouldn't be involved. So the fact that he hasn't travelled and kind of Mourinho is labelled him as a doubt, I'm not as confident as him playing, and that will be a massive, massive blow for Spurs.
Sam Trester in the chat said, Joe, what tactics have kept Son and Kane quiet this season? And could you please forward that on to Arteta?
Well, Chelsea did a pretty good job, didn't they, on Sunday? Have managed to, Kane in the second half, he had a touch. It's a hard one, isn't it? Even in games against Manchester City, when Spurs were pretty much on the back foot for most of it, they were controlled, but on the back foot, a typical Mourinho low block style of performance. Son and Kane still managed to cause havoc at times, and I think that's Arsenal's biggest worry for the weekend is being caught on the break. As most teams, would worry with the pace of Son and whoever plays in that three, whether it's Lucas, Bergwijn or Bale, and then obviously Kane. How many times have we seen Kane split and pass through to Son to break in behind? So to be honest with you, I don't know how they're going to stop them, and I hope they do really struggle to stop them. Because I think as I said, Chelsea did a very good job on really eliminating Tottenham's threats, but it also comes down to how Tottenham set up. And Mourinho went to Stamford Bridge not to lose that game. I have no doubt about that. If it was a point, then it was a point. If we could nick it, then we nick it. But just don't lose that game. I don't know how he's going to... I'm imagining he'll be a little bit more positive, I guess is the word to use, in the North London derby, considering you're at home and you're playing against an Arsenal side that aren't in the greatest form. So I think, as I said, a lot of it relies on how Tottenham set up.
Yeah, I was listening to do 5 Live the other day about and they're talking about Spurs. And I think it might have been Danny Murphy turning around saying that if you give Spurs the ball, it's a bit of a problem, and that because they're so good in counter-attacking style, that actually giving Spurs the ball and making them do the work and making them break you down is one of the ways in which you can compete. And it's something that not many teams have really done against it so far this season. And maybe it's something that Arsenal should look at doing, that even themselves are quite tactically looking towards the counter-attack, that they are very bad with the ball at the moment, breaking teams down, finding creativity. So it could be a case where both teams are scared of the ball and you get a pretty much a stalemate. But I expect Spurs to have that little bit more guile about them, especially considering there are going to be fans back in the ground, and I especially think they'll want to put a show on for them as well. And that we saw it in midweek for Arsenal, even though it was a dead rubber against Rapid Vienna. Just having the fans in the ground, there was a noticeable difference in the performance. So I think that will certainly have an impact on it. Let me just throw on to the Arsenal lineup, which I've gone for. And the biggest thing about this for me is Lacazette playing in that kind of second striker role, as well as it being a back four as well. Initially, I would have gone for a back three. There was a couple of reasons as to why I've changed it. One of them is the news about Thomas Partey. Those that follow the very reliable AFC Bell on Twitter, he has recently come out saying that apparently Partey's been given the green light for the game, which I always said if Partey plays, Arsenal have a chance in this game, because we saw it against Manchester United. He is so integral to the solidity of Arsenal's midfield. He is so far and above all the other central midfielders that we have in terms of quality, that if it was a Granit Xhaka, if it was a Dani Ceballos playing on that right-hand side of the midfield, or even the left-hand side, it would have been catastrophic to see how easily you would have cut through us, turned us, hit us on the break. Partey gives you that stability that we didn't necessarily have before that. The other big shout in there is to put Ainsley Maitland-Niles next to him. In midweek, Mainsley was brilliant. He provided mobility, and he added that little bit of forward momentum in the passing and in possession that we have lacked from that central kind of area of the pitch. Lacazette playing as a central striker is something that has worked previously. It's also been completely nothing in games. Sometimes he just completely goes missing. But I feel that with Partey in the midfield, it's an interesting dynamic to put him there, to see what he can kind of do, hold the ball up, which we've done so poorly throughout the whole season. And we don't really have anyone else that can play in that role right now. You've got Tierney, Gabriel, Luiz and Bellerin. Luiz, I think, is the weak link mainly of that back line. He will provide us with good sort of distribution from the back. But in terms of defensively, I can easily see him giving away a penalty against a Heung-min Son running into the box very, very easily. Bellerin can be caught up pitch too easily. And then the front line of Aubameyang, Saka and Willian. Saka is our biggest creative spark. He's the one I think that most opposition fans worry about the most, along with Aubameyang if he gets into those finishing positions. And Willian goes in there purely because he adds something defensively that Nelson doesn't right now. I think a lot of people may have wanted to see Nelson start, but I think if Willian performs like he did against Manchester United, you've got a chance to shut down that right-hand side a lot better, and I think he provides Bellerin the cover a lot better, and he partners with Partey quite well. So seeing that side, Joe, what are kind of your thoughts around that?
I think the first thing to say, and I'm probably saying this as a person who watches lots of football and as a football fan rather than a Tottenham fan, I think the work that Arteta is doing, for, Tom, when we spoke in the past, the last 15 years, really since Patrick Vieira left the club, Arsenal have been, missing, I think, that spine, that kind of, that presence in the middle of the field to really shut games out and to stop teams causing them problems. I think it'd probably be fair to say that Arsenal have got, been labelled as having a soft underbelly in the last 10, 15 years, kind of not got that central kind of authoritative figure. And I feel like Arteta's building that, but it's going to take time. And the way you build that is by becoming more defensive, and it naturally makes the Arsenal way disappear slightly. The Arsenal way that we were used to under Arsene Wenger, that attacking, free-flowing style of football, it kind of disappears. But you've got to give the man time to try and bring in that that style that he wants to bring in. And Arsenal have become harder to break down this season. Saying that, I look at the back five, including the goalkeeper, and I think it's gettable. Any back four that has David Luiz in it, for me, I look at that with confidence, because I just think that if Kane and Son are at it, they could have a field day. Is my honest thinking. I've been impressed with Gabriel this season. I think he's looked at a solid acquisition. Do you think he's going to start Aubameyang and Lacazette? You think he'll go with both of them?
I've grown more confident that he will, based upon Thursday's performance from Lacazette. I do think that Arteta will give it a thought. I also think that if he doesn't go with the back four and he goes with the back three, we could see Aubameyang back on the left-hand side, because that's where he played against Manchester United. That's where he has played very well against Chelsea and Man City away from home in the FA Cup last season, and he's very good at hitting teams in behind. And if you look at, say, Serge Aurier, who likes to get very far up the pitch, he could utilise that space that is generated in behind for Aubameyang to run into. So if that's the case, then I assume Lacazette would start in the middle. There's a lot of people in the chat box saying that they would go with a 3-4-3 or a 3-5-2. So it's very much, it's up in the air with Arsenal right now as to the selection. No one's really sure what's going to happen and what we're going to do. But I think it comes back to what you were saying there. That defensive line with Luiz and Bellerin both on that right-hand side. The other option is to play Holding, who I've said he's been good this season. He's been a 7 out of 10 in most games.
Still think he's gettable as well.
But again, he's gettable. That's the point, is that he's not world class. He's not as good as Gabriel. He's not as good as the other centre-backs that is playing on that left-hand side. So and what's annoying is obviously that your right-hand side is probably the weakest part of your attack. The left-hand side is certainly stronger with Son being there. And our weakest part of our defence is our right-hand side. So it's a perfect matchup for Spurs effectively on that side. So that is where I ultimately see the game being won or lost, is in Arsenal's defensive right-hand side and your attacking left-hand side, and centrally too with how Kane is so effective.
But I mean, you must look at Spurs' back four and think that's gettable as well, right? I mean, people have been saying it all season. You can't, can Spurs win the league? You can't win the league at back four. That's what people have been saying anyway. Spurs were used to having, that back four that was seen as probably the best back four in the Premier League for a couple of seasons, with Danny Rose at left back, Toby Alderweireld and Vertonghen as centre half, and Kyle Walker as right back. And obviously that's slowly disintegrated in terms of Walker left, Vertonghen's now gone. Rose is obviously, we know the situation with Danny Rose where he's just, well down the pecking order at the club to the extent he's been training with the first team. And they've built up, I think Reguilon was a superb signing. I think he's possibly, along with Højbjerg, been our signing to the summer. And I think Doherty, if he's not, because I haven't put him in that starting 11 for Spurs, if he hasn't, brought a strongness to his own right back claim, he's brought the best out of Serge Aurier for me. I think Aurier's been superb this season. And then obviously of Alderweireld and Dyer at centre half, but I still think people will look at that and think they can, they'll get opportunities. But one thing I think you can be sure of, if Spurs take the lead, Arsenal are going to find it very, very, very hard to get back into the game, which Spurs have done a few times in the past. I remember speaking to you last year ahead of the North London derby, which was at the Emirates, when Spurs went 2-0 up and Arsenal pulled it back. If Spurs go 2-0 up in this game, there is no coming back for Arsenal, in my opinion. I think even if Spurs go 1-0 up, I think the way Mourinho is able to get his sides to close games out, I just cannot see Arsenal being able to get back into the game.
It is very tough, and I think it comes down to when the goal is scored and who obviously scores that first one. Last season, of course, Arsenal got in ahead of Spurs at your new ground, and then we just completely crumbled at the back in the second half. I think there was a goal right at the end of the first half as well, which was very damaging to the team going in at half time. Xhaka made a mistake, I believe, and that really did hamper the mental side of things. But it's a very, very different scenario for Arsenal right now. The mentality is on the floor. I don't know if you've seen the reports in the week, but Arteta held basically a team meeting whereby there was a lot of arguing between the players around like who is to blame for some of the issues and the bad start to the season. I'm hoping that kind of galvanises them, because apparently it ended very amicably and there was a lot of people sort of resolving a lot of problems that were around the ground at the moment. But this is one of those games where form does go out the window. It doesn't matter where you're at in the table. Both teams can have a right go. One game can have a complete stinker and the other one can have an amazing day. So it really does depend on which team and how Arsenal and Spurs turn up on the day. We close the show out with our predictions. So tell me what you're thinking, mate.
I knew this was coming. If you offered me a draw now, I would take it. I know
really?
It's very pessimistic.
I don't know about that.
But as a Spurs fan coming on a Gooner channel, I've got to stick my neck out and
Yeah.
go for my team, I think Spurs will win 2-0.
That's really interesting that you've said that, because from my perspective, if someone offered me a draw, I think for Arsenal a draw is a great result in this game, even with our poor form. But there's still like the instinctual part of me that goes, of course you don't take a draw if someone offers it to you in the derby because you want that chance of winning. In my head, it makes sense for Arsenal to accept a draw in this game. And maybe Arteta, with his defensive style, will set out try and achieve that. I think it's going to be very, very difficult to do that in this game, especially against Jose Mourinho's, in my opinion, Jose Mourinho's easily kind of superior tactical mind. Arteta is still very inexperienced. I hope in the world that he can turn things around and move things forward. But Mourinho's tactics are legendary at this point in certain games. And this, I feel, is one of those games where he's going to have his head screwed on properly. So it's going to be interesting to see how we go about it. I'm obviously going to be optimistic, and by optimistic, I'm going to go over 1-1 draw in this game. So it's that's where my head's at. I don't see it being high scoring. The only way I see it high scoring is if Spurs absolutely blitz us, to be honest, and that'll come down to you getting an early goal, us coming out to try and get the equaliser, and then getting hit on the counter. So it's a really tough one to call. You there, Joe?
Yeah.
You cut off
I like that you're saying you're optimistic looking for a draw. That would be feel good.
Yes, yeah. I'm sure it did.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you now, mate. It's all good.
I was
Go
just
for
saying,
it. You cut out for just a second.
Yeah. No, I was just saying, yeah, that you saying that makes, fills me with confidence and shows kind of the gap between the sides, really, which has been a big debate for so long. And at one stage, it looked like Spurs were kind of falling behind, and now obviously they've managed to put it back in terms of the North London divide, and I think you probably couldn't argue that at the moment Spurs are the far stronger side. It'll be interesting, as I said, and as you said, a North London derby, anything can happen, and the kind of form book goes out of the window. I think it's interesting that, well, there are going to be fans in there, obviously, but the lack of fans is an element, and I think it does change the dynamic slightly. Whether 2,000 Spurs fans will actually benefit Spurs now, because obviously there'll be no Arsenal presence at all in the stadium from a fan perspective. I don't know whether that will play a part. I do think the lack of a crowd doesn't give the game its unpredictability that we're used to. I think when the fans are in there, it can really change. I think form does go out the window. I'm not sure whether it's as much of a case when it's just kind of the 22 players on the pitch and no one in the stands. As I said, I know there will be 2,000 Spurs fans, but, it's not the 60,000 that we're used to. Although saying that, we've never had a North London derby at the new stadium yet, so I cannot wait for the first ever full house.
Well, yeah,
North
you did,
London
because you
derby.
beat us there last season.
Yeah, I mean,
unless you would
with crowds. Sorry.
Oh, okay. I thought you were just trying to make me say that. That's all you were doing. But no, yeah. To be fair, I was surprised how many fans it seems like there are. Well, how spaced out they are. They cover a lot of the ground, and on Thursday evening they covered most of the like round the semicircle on the far side of the dugout on the west stand. So it's going to be interesting to see.
Well, I believe they're all going to be placed in one stand tomorrow.
Really? Oh wow, yeah, that's interesting.
All behind the goal.
That's really interesting. So it'd be interesting to see how that kind of affects the atmosphere of it. Because if you've got them like spread out round the ground, you've got that kind of spread of support, I suppose. But if it's in one end, maybe that'll channel the noise a lot better. So who knows? It's going to be interesting to see. Let's just drop into the chat box to see what you guys are saying. Yannick Mack says 2-2. Katir says 2-1. Chris says, I'm not confident, so I'm going to go for a 4-0 Arsenal win. Loving that. Russ says 1-0 down to Arsenal. Haven't been in that position all year. So, I mean, we have been in several times where we're dropping points and winning positions, but I think that if anyone's going to score first, I can't really see it being Arsenal at the moment. Chilip's going for a 3-1 Arsenal win, very confident. Katir, I've already covered. Martino says Spurs won't even be able to fill 2,000. Oh, he's throwing in the shade your way. He's throwing the shade in your direction. Chris is going, we've talked about that. So, in terms of finishing off the show, Joe, I would usually, it's in the nicest way, if we're playing 7-a-side, I might wish you good luck, but I can't do that with this. But enjoy the game to the best you can, mate. But I appreciate you taking the time to come on the show. I really do.
Thanks, mate. And I don't wish you any luck for tomorrow.
Yes.
But,
yes.
But yeah, thanks for asking me to come on.
No problem at all. I wouldn't have it any other way, mate. Any other way. Thank you, everyone in the chat box and everyone watching on playback for listening to this afternoon show. Make sure you enjoy the rest of your Saturday, and we'll see you straight after the game tomorrow to either cry with joy or pain. So make sure you tune in for that one. We'll see you again very, very soon. And as always, up the Arsenal.